My name is Daniel, and I worked as a night orderly at St. Alden's Hospital. It wasn't a great job, but it paid the bills. St. Alden's was old, too old. The kind of place where every floorboard creak felt like it was trying to tell you a story. Most of them weren't the kind you'd want to hear. It was a quiet Tuesday night, the kind of shift that makes you hyper-aware of every sound. By 2 a.m., the hospital felt deserted. The emergency wing was dead silent, and most of the patients in Ward C were asleep. Ward C, though, it was different. It was the oldest wing of the hospital, reserved for long-term patients nobody seemed to visit. I was sitting at the nurses' station, staring at the monitor, half dozing, when I saw it. Room 306's call light flickered on. That wouldn't have been strange, except for one thing. Room 306 had been empty for weeks. The last patient in that room, Mr. Reynolds, had passed away there under strange circumstances. The staff whispered about that room, saying it was off. I told myself it was probably just a glitch, grabbed my flashlight, and headed down the hall. The corridor was dimly lit, and the closer I got to 306, the colder the air felt. Hospitals are always chilly, but this was different, a kind of cold that settled in your bones. When I reached the door, my gut told me to turn around and forget I'd seen anything, but I pushed the door open anyway. The room was dark, except for a faint glow from the streetlights outside. The bed was empty, neatly made, just as it had been since the cleaning staff prepared it weeks ago. But something felt wrong. I scanned the room with my flashlight. It flickered briefly, and in that moment, I saw it. A figure stood in the far corner of the room, hunched and shadowy. Its shape wasn't right, its back arched unnaturally, and its head tilted at an impossible angle. I froze, the beam of my flashlight trembling as I pointed it back to the corner. The figure was gone. I backed out of the room, my heart pounding, and turned to head back to the nurses' station. That's when I heard it. A faint dragging sound like something heavy being pulled across the floor echoed down the hallway. I spun around, my flashlight cutting through the dark. The sound grew louder, closer, until it stopped abruptly. And then I saw the wheelchair. It rolled out of 306, slowly, as if being pushed by invisible hands. My legs locked as it creaked to a halt in the center of the hallway, facing me. The chair sat still, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was watching me. I backed away, my hand fumbling for the walkie-talkie clipped to my belt. "Anyone in Ward C? We've got a situation," I said, my voice barely steady. Static. The hallway lights began to flicker, casting long, distorted shadows. I felt a cold breath on the back of my neck and turned instinctively, but no one was there. When I turned back to the wheelchair, it was gone. That's when the screams started. They weren't loud, but they were unmistakable, coming from 306. They sounded distant, muffled, like someone was trapped behind thick glass. Against every ounce of self-preservation in my body, I found myself walking back to that room. The door was ajar, the flickering light inside casting an unnatural glow. As I stepped in, the air felt thick, almost suffocating. The bed was no longer empty. Mr. Reynolds was lying there, his pale, lifeless face turned toward me, eyes wide open. But it wasn't just him, it was the way he moved. His body convulsed, as if strings were pulling him upward. His mouth opened, but instead of words, that same muffled scream echoed out. I stumbled back, hitting the wall behind me. And then, just as quickly as it started, it stopped. The bed was empty again. I don't remember much after that. The next thing I knew, the morning crew was shaking me awake in the nurses' station. I tried to explain what I'd seen, but they just laughed it off, blaming my imagination or sleep deprivation. I quit that job the next day, but sometimes late at night I hear that faint dragging sound. And when I do, I know one thing for sure. There's no such thing as an empty hospital room.